Join us on the horn right now, a Concordia alum who did his GA years under John Beilein at the University of Michigan. He's now an assistant coach at Ohio University. Our good buddy, the coach, Coach Barlow. Coach Barlow, good morning to you, my friend. Happy game day. What's going on over there?
Good morning from the, you mentioned all the cities from the Glass City to Traverse City. Well, we're in Ypsi now, so yep, enjoying the nice snow that you guys got up here. It's not too bad down in Athens, but you guys got a lot of snow. Makes running in the morning awful difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you got to find a treadmill. That's where you guys staying at, by the way?
Oh, we're at we're at Eagle Crest. One of your favorite courses around this way.
Beautiful
lots of water,
track.
Lots of trouble. Yeah, lots of trouble.
Yeah, that final stretch, like 15 through 18, just it's. I have I don't know how to even feel about that. Your game against Eastern Michigan tonight, I got to see Emoni Bates put on an absolute spectacle, Coach Barlow. He came to the Glass City last week. That dude scored 29 consecutive points. I mean, he was hoisting and pulling up from everywhere. And then all those shots that dropped in the first half were the reason that they were in the game. But then those shots didn't drop in the second half, and that was the reason that they lost the game. And all I could go back was to our conversation. I mean, it was one of those things, like the magical shooter, but you got to do more than just shoot the basketball.
Well, and it's like scoring at the rim too, and just not Emoni personally, but just in general, you have to have balance, right? In a lot of your to build a really good basketball team. You look at a team like Toledo, they shoot the ball really well too. I mean, they have JT Shoemate, they got Maddox, and Ray J. Dennis and all those guys. But the big thing is they can also score in the paint with Ray J at the rim. You got Milner getting offensive rebounds, him scoring at the rim. So it's like building a team, building a winner, a sustainable winner. You're going to have to play elite defense and have maybe just some okay offensive guys, like a couple of teams in our league, or you have to be really talented offensively and really deep, right? And that goes for pretty much any team, and whether it's a back-to-the-basket post player, which is still existing in the college game, not so much in the pro game, or it's guys who can get in the paint, guards who can get in the paint and finish at the rim, because obviously those are way more high percentage and way more reliable throughout the course of the game.
I heard a story here recently that I think our listeners will very much enjoy, and I have to ask you this. There was a pair of brothers that were out in Iowa, right? Siblings, and they were pretty under-recruited because at the time they were kind of they're a lot smaller than they are right now. You may know where this story's going. Who was the first guy to go recruit at the mid-major level? This pair of brothers, these siblings that were that turned out to be pretty good basketball players. Was that you, Mr. Barlow?
I'll tell you what, the Murray twins turned out to be really, really good. Ended up at a right spot. Went to a prep school. 6'3" is when I first saw them, and now obviously they're 6'8", 6'9". And absolute just monsters, and really skilled.
That's Keegan and Chris Murray from Iowa. Just in case people are like, "Who are you talking about?" I'm talking about those two brothers.
Haven't we seen this kind of blueprint for late bloomers? You look at guys who are good basketball players who develop guard skills because they're 6 foot to 6'3". The Murray twins come to mind. Kevin Durant is somebody always talks about. Anthony Davis is someone people always talk about, of hitting this just amazing growth spurt at about 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, somewhere around there. And then that's how you end up in the NBA because, let's be honest, you've coached youth basketball before too. What do you do with the biggest guy? The biggest guy, you're going down to the block, right? You're setting screens, and maybe you can pick and pop and stretch the floor. But if you're a guy who's been, small or smaller and a guard your whole life, and then all of a sudden you shoot up to 6'9", that's where you see the Kevin Durant's, the Anthony Davises, the Murray twins, that people at Big Ten would be familiar with because you have the base of guard skills, and then you just end up being huge. Right? Isn't that funny how these late bloomers, I can think of another one too, with Jason Preston, who we had the privilege to watch. We lost to Akron on Saturday. We stayed up in Cleveland. And then the Clippers came and visited Cleveland. And the best part about all this load management that I'm sure people hate, especially fans, and rightfully so, is the Clippers only dressed 8 guys because they're playing the second of a back-to-back. And we know Kawhi don't play back-to-backs. Paul George was sitting out. John Wall was sitting out. Steven Jackson was sitting out. And I was like, or Reggie Jackson, sorry. And so we got to see him play. Jason played the second, third, and fourth quarters, and it was awesome, man. And he was a late bloomer too. You know, he was a 6 foot, 160 pounds as a senior in high school. You know, and went to prep school, grew a few inches. Went to college, grew a few inches, and put on some weight, and boom, now you got an NBA player. And the thing I said to him after the game, it's something we forget, Bellino, but it was really surreal watching him play on an NBA floor. Because just 2 years ago, he was, you know, in our offices and in my living room and at our house. You know, it's really surreal. And now he's playing in front of a packed crowd. It's like 8 billion people on this earth, right? And I told him this. I said, do you know how lucky you are? There's, you know, 30 NBA teams times 15, let's say. Do you know what percentage you are? We talk about the 1%, like it's so spoiled and privileged. There is it's 0.000000056% for 800 million people. I just did 800. I didn't do 8 billion. And that's a lot of zeros before that 0.56%. So it's if you think about it, what an amazing thing it is and an amazing accomplishment. And it's just hard to play on that floor, man. It's a lot of guys' dreams, especially at this level. It's hard to play on that floor. And in the MAC right now, you've had probably going to be 3 straight years with somebody drafted because I think Emoni Bates is definitely going to get drafted, whether it's first round or second round. So it's extremely hard to set a foot on that floor. And I told him especially, and, you know, people should know it's something you can't take for granted, for definitely.
No, I thought that, you know, Dwayne Casey had a comment yesterday. James Edwards was interviewing him, and he asked him about the young nucleus of a team, right? Because it's everybody's dream to get there. And at what point do, you know, the 99.9% of guys that get to the NBA, they're not going to be the star, right? But it's everybody's dream that they want to be the star player. And he talked about the pecking order and how it's a little bit in disarray right now in Detroit, whereas in Dallas, they know he referred to him as the queen bee. They know who the queen bee is, and that makes life a little bit easier. And I thought that was really interesting that it is that important at that level to have your established, this is our go-to guy. But it can't just be something you say. It's got to be Luka Doncic is going to get 53. Like, that is your go-to guy. Like, guy makes every shot he takes. We just don't have that in Detroit. We don't know what the pecking order is right now without Cade Cunningham distributing the basketball.
No, and you look at, there's a lot of different ways to build it. And, you know, the thing that sticks in my mind, especially after watching the Cavs and the Clippers, is the Cavs built it, you know, through the draft. They got a lot of young pieces, and Garland, Sexton, Mobley, a lot of guys they liked. And then Donovan Mitchell becomes available, and they have enough assets to put together a package that's going to bring Donovan Mitchell here. We know that he is the queen bee, according to Dwayne Casey, terminology by Dwayne Casey. So that's one way to do it. And then you have the Boston Celtics, where you just give them time and be patient. And we've compared the Pistons to the Celtics a few times on the show, where it's like, yeah, you need, you know, Tatum might have been the final piece, and he was the one that ended up being the queen bee because you had, you know, Scary Terry, you had, now I'm drawing the blank, Marcus Smart, and then the other guard. Yeah, Jaylen Brown. Mm-hmm. And then you add Jason Tatum, and then it still takes them a couple years to really get into relevance when you're talking about NBA championship picture. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. I think the Pistons are really going through it right now, especially without Cade Cunningham. And how about, I feel bad for James Edwards. Sometimes I read those articles on The Athletic, and it's just like, it's gloomy, man. And he does a really good job because he's on the beat and he has to produce the content. But how often do you just have this supreme optimism when a team's literally giving up 130 points a night?
It's not easy. I think people take it for granted. Like, these guys are trying to tell stories. They got to see these people every day. You know, I mean, I could sit here on the radio and condemn everybody, right? And it's like, okay, well, I don't have to show up. I don't have to cover practice. I don't have to see anybody, so it's easy for me to do. It's another thing when you want access to players and you want to be able to share some of their stories and, you know, tell the story of a game in a much different, I don't know. And some people think that you're working for the man, but you're really not. Like, you're working for yourself at that point to be able to maintain quality relationships, even though, like, they understand you have a job to do. You have to be fair. You have to be honest. You're going to have to speculate about trades because it's that time of year. But one thing where, you know, you mentioned James Edwards, and I take a lot of flack for this here on this program because people think I won't say anything negative, although I have been a little bit negative about our Michigan Wolverines. Here's my question to you on the basketball side of things. They're on the outside looking in. They're not even close to anywhere on the map on bracketology anywhere you look. So I think the NCAA tournament is basically out of reach unless they just go crazy and win every game here on out. If they don't do that, what is the process for the NIT? Take us through what that is like. How are teams selected for the NIT? And do you think that Michigan would get an invitation there?
Well, there's still so much basketball to be played. So, in general, we can talk about the NIT, but the best thing that Michigan has going for them is they play in a top 2, maybe top 3, maybe the number 1 league in the country, and they have an opportunity every night to get a signature win. And that Purdue game at home, you would love to see Jet Howard in that game. Because that would have been a signature win that really carries a lot of weight. But you're in the Big Ten, man. You are not out of the NCAA tournament picture on February 1st or January 31st, whatever today is. So it's like you still have a lot of games in front of you. You still have a lot of opportunities to win in front of you. So I'm not saying Michigan's dead. Now it's not good. It's not looking great, but they're definitely not dead. They have a lot of opportunities. Juwan Howard has proven that he can have teams playing really well at the end of the year, a la last year where Devontae Jones basically single-handedly brought them into the tournament with wins at Ohio State. And I'm blanking on the other one, but the Ohio State game was such a big game. So, if that doesn't happen, just the fact that you're a power conference team doesn't guarantee you're in the NIT because you have a ton of bids going out to mid-majors who don't win their conference tournament. So if you win your conference, so if we won the MAC this year and then lost in the MAC tournament, we would have an automatic bid to the NIT. And then after all those automatic bids are dispersed, there's 32 teams. And then you start doing your at-large burst. And those are, the first 4 out are usually the 1 seeds, how the Nardi and all those guys do the first 4 out of the NCAA tournament. Those are your 1 seeds. Those are the guys that really thought they were going to be in. And then after that, you start taking really, really good teams, and usually it's according to net ranking. So there's no guarantee that a Big Ten team, just because they don't make the NCAA tournament, is making the NIT. So there's it's still a prestigious tournament. It's still an elite tournament, even though it's looked as the JV tournament compared to the NCAA tournament. So that would be my spiel, man. Michigan still has a chance. They really do. You play a game every night that's a quad 1 game in the net rankings, and that can boost you a long way.
Yeah, because the NIT has, 32 teams in total?
32 teams, yep.
Yeah, scary hours. I appreciate your positivity. They could still get some signature wins. Man, we gave up 50 in the first half to Penn State. I mean, it's, defensively, it's looking grim. Like, I don't know what else. I don't know how to say it. In that Purdue game, it's like they showed so much against Purdue, and then to come out flat on the road at Penn State and have to play in a couple of days on the road at Northwestern, a sneaky good Northwestern team this year, and then welcome in Ohio State. Like, oh man, it's gonna be some tough sledding here.
Yeah, and you look at it as an opportunity, definitely. And this is an unforgiving league. The Big Ten's an unforgiving league. Like if you're having a little bit of a letdown because you didn't beat Purdue, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get smacked down the road against Penn State. There's no game that you can walk into and say, "Whew, thank goodness we play these dudes." A few years ago it used to be Rutgers. It used to be Nebraska. Northwestern. You could even say for the past couple of years, but there's not one game where you're walking into and it's like, all right, thank God we got a little bye game in our week. But there's none of that this year, especially in the Big Ten.
Well, you know what? I had to ask. I needed to ask because right now, it's NCAA tournament. As you mentioned, there are opportunities to get in, but it's looking grim. And the NIT, people asking me about that. I'm like, look, I'm not so sure this team can make the NIT at this point.
It could go both ways at this point right now. That's your ceiling. Your ceiling is the NCAA tournament. Your floor is sitting home and watching all the basketball.
1, 2, 3, Cancun, right? Is that what we said? Sorry about that. A little too soon. I think, and I was asked this earlier via our YouTube stream. Is Juwan Howard? Is he on the hot seat? And look, John Beilein, 12 years at Michigan, missed the tournament 3 times. It happened right in the middle of his tenure there at U of M. It happens from time to time. I think the biggest thing plaguing this Michigan Wolverines team is something that you mentioned last week that I hope that people will take just a little bit of a second to re-listen to this. That what they're lacking is consistency, not necessarily on the floor, but in their lineup. Look at the amount of turnover that they have had. They've gone to the portal in back-to-back years for a point guard, Mike Smith, Devontae Jones. You lose Zeb Jackson. You lose Frankie Collins. You lost Brandon Johns Jr. Those are all portal guys. You bring in Doug McDaniel, Jalen Llewellyn. Llewellyn's knee is gone, so therefore Doug is being asked to play 40 minutes a game, and I think he's doing an outstanding job. I don't need him to go 7 for 7 from 3 and score 40 points a night. I just need him to run the offense. I think Doug's been fabulous. Lay off on my guy, Dougie Fresh. Right? You lose Caleb Houston. You lose Moussa Diabate. You lost Franz Wagner. You lost Iggy. Right? You lose all of these guys year after year after year. Guys are graduating, guys transfer, new guys coming in. There's no consistency within the program right now. The only consistent pieces have been Hunter Dickinson and Terrence Williams.
It's a testament to actually Juwan Howard and his staff for bringing in such NBA talent. You know, besides the transfers, who probably are good enough to play, like those guys you mentioned, who are probably good enough to play, especially as juniors and seniors, but they were playing behind NBA players and Moussa Diabate, Caleb Houston, Franz Wagner, guys like that. So it's like you have these one and dones, and that really, like, it's hard to maintain that level of recruitment. It's hard to, because, sometimes you could have a 5-star, but he might not be any good. We've seen that before too, in college basketball. So it's hard to maintain that level of recruiting and consistency. And if it weren't for Hunter Dickinson staying, then I think they'd really be going through it this year. And then it's like you got to have those guys who, are juniors and seniors who have been in your program for 3-4 years, who can kind of take that big role as a junior and senior without, and this is the tricky part, without them transferring because they're not playing. Like, Brandon Johns, Zeb, those guys transferred because they weren't playing, but those are program guys that you probably needed in a year like this. But you have to play your NBA talent, above those guys. You've got to play Moussa Diabate. Like, you had to. He was just that good. But then when he leaves after a year, and then their backup leaves because they weren't playing, they want a better opportunity somewhere else, such as college basketball. Like, no shame on that. But then when that happens, now you have a lot of roster turnover, and you've seen teams have this happen to them. You've seen Kentucky have this happen to them when they were getting a ton of one and dones, and then the next crop of one and dones ended up not being any good. Those 5-stars ended up not being very good. And so they've had some turmoil there. You've seen it with Duke. You've seen it, you see it all around the country. So that's probably the biggest key in college basketball right now is keeping the right guys and not missing in the portal, whether it's due to injury or due to a guy just not being who you thought they were. And, you're bringing in these portal guys as a junior, senior into your program thinking that they're going to play like a junior, senior and give you some level of production. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes it takes a while to adjust. Like, who's the guard at Michigan State from Northeastern, who Izzo kept saying last year, he just needs time. He's good. Tyson Walker, I believe, is his name. And this year he's been playing really well. And so sometimes you need that adjustment to the high major level, or to the mid-major level from low major or D2 or whatever. So, I think that's very interesting to watch in college basketball. And, I have all the faith in Juwan. He's shown he can do it in the past, and, he's put together a lot of talented teams.
He is the coach, Kyle Barlow. They're taking on Eastern Michigan tonight in Ypsi. Coach Barlow, as always, my friend, thank you for your time. Best of luck tonight in the game of Shooty Hoops.
Appreciate it.